The morning briefing room at Naval Air Station Fallon buzzed with the usual pre-mission energy. Fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the gray walls, lined with tactical maps and mission boards. Captain Jake Morrison, a decorated Navy SEAL with 15 years of special operations experience, stood at the head of the conference table reviewing satellite imagery. His weathered hands traced potential insertion points on the large monitor display. "Gentlemen, this is Operation Desert Falcon," Morrison began, his voice carrying the authority that came from leading countless successful missions. "We have a high-value target located in a compound 40 miles southeast of Kandahar. Intelligence suggests the target will be mobile within 72 hours. The SEAL team members leaned forward, studying the aerial photographs. The compound sat in a valley surrounded by rocky terrain, with limited approach routes and multiple defensive positions. It was the kind of target that required precision timing and flawless execution. "Sir, what about air support?" asked Petty Officer Rodriguez, pointing to the elevated positions surrounding the compound. "Those ridgelines could house anti-aircraft weapons," Morrison nodded. "That's exactly why we need the best combat pilot available. This mission requires someone who can navigate through narrow mountain passes, avoid radar detection, and provide precise close air support if things get complicated." He picked up a tablet and scrolled through pilot profiles. "Command is sending us their top recommendation. Should arrive within the hour for mission planning." The team continued reviewing the operational details when a knock echoed through the briefing room. Morrison called out, "Enter." The door opened, and a figure in a standard flight suit stepped inside. The newcomer was smaller in stature than most of the SEALs expected, with shoulder-length auburn hair pulled back in a regulation bun. She carried herself with quiet confidence, her green eyes taking in the room's occupants with the same careful assessment they were giving her. "Captain Morrison? I'm Captain Sarah Chen, reporting for Operation Desert Falcon briefing." A moment of silence filled the room. Several team members exchanged glances. This wasn't what they had expected when command promised their best combat pilot. Morrison recovered first, extending his hand. "Captain Chen, welcome. I was expecting someone else?" Chen's voice remained steady. Professional. She'd clearly been through this before. "I understand the surprise, sir. It happens more often than you might think." Petty Officer Williams, a hulking man with arms like tree trunks, couldn't hide his skepticism. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this mission involves flying through some of the most dangerous terrain in Afghanistan. We need someone with serious combat experience." We need someone with serious combat experience." Chen's expression didn't change. She simply reached into her flight suit pocket and placed a small stack of mission patches on the conference table. Each patch represented a different combat operation, and there were more than anyone in the room had expected to see. 78 combat missions over 4 deployments, she said calmly, including the evacuation of Bravo Company from Firebase Delta under heavy fire, the precision strike that took out the weapons cache at Tora Bora, and the night insertion that led to the capture of Ahmad Hassan 2 months ago. The room grew quieter. Several SEALs leaned forward to get a better look at the patches. These weren't ceremonial awards. They were the real thing, worn and faded from actual use. Morrison studied Chen more carefully. "Firebase Delta? That was you? The pilot who flew through that sandstorm?" "Yes, sir. Visibility was near zero, but Bravo Company needed immediate extraction. Sometimes you have to trust your instruments more than your eyes." Sergeant First Class Thompson, the team's senior enlisted man, had been silent until now. He'd heard about Firebase Delta through military channels. The rescue had become something of a legend. A pilot who'd flown into conditions that grounded every other aircraft in the region. "Captain, I heard about that mission," Thompson said slowly. "They said it was impossible." Every other pilot turned back. Chen shrugged slightly. "Every other pilot made a different calculation than I did. Bravo Company had wounded men who wouldn't survive until the weather cleared. Sometimes impossible is just another word for difficult." Morrison felt his initial doubts beginning to shift. The woman standing before him spoke with the quiet confidence of someone who'd faced real danger and emerged successful. but his team's lives would depend on her skills, and he needed to be absolutely certain. Captain Chen, I'll be direct. This mission requires flying at extremely low altitude through mountain passes that most pilots consider impassable at night. We'll need precise navigation, split-second timing, and the ability to provide close air support if our extraction gets complicated. Chen nodded. I've reviewed the preliminary mission data, sir. The terrain is challenging, but manageable with the right approach. The key will be using the natural contours of the mountain passes to mask our approach and maintaining radio silence until absolutely necessary. And if we encounter enemy fire? Rodriguez asked. Then we adapt and overcome, Chen replied without hesitation. I've provided close air support for special operations teams before. I understand the importance of precision when friendly forces are nearby. Williams still looked unconvinced. Ma'am, no disrespect intended, but some of us have worked with pilots who talk a good game in the briefing room, but fold under pressure when bullets start flying. Chen turned to face Williams directly. Her voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. Petty officer, I understand your concerns. Your lives depend on my performance, and you don't know me well enough to trust me yet. That's professional and appropriate. She paused, letting her words sink in. But I want you to understand something. I've never lost a man under my protection. Not in 78 missions. Not once. And I don't intend to start with this operation. The room fell silent again. Morrison found himself reassessing his initial reaction. There was something about Chen's demeanor that reminded him of the best operators he'd worked with. A quiet intensity that spoke of competence tested under fire. Captain, what aircraft will you be flying for this mission? Morrison asked. An AA-64 Apache, sir. Modified for special operations with enhanced navigation systems and reduced noise signature. She's not the newest bird in the fleet, but I've been flying her for 2 years. We understand each other. Thompson raised an eyebrow. You've been flying the same aircraft for 2 years? When possible, yes. Every aircraft has its own personality, its own quirks. The more time you spend with one, the better you understand its capabilities and limitations. My bird and I have been through a lot together. Morrison appreciated the sentiment. SEALs often had similar relationships with their weapons and gear. Familiarity bred confidence, and confidence could mean the difference between success and failure. Tell me about your approach to the target area, Morrison said, pointing to the satellite imagery. Chen moved to the map display, studying the terrain features. Based on the topography, I'd recommend approaching from the northeast, using this ridgeline to mask our signature until we're within 15 miles of the target. The passes here and here provide natural corridors that should keep us below most radar coverage. She traced a route with her finger, indicating specific waypoints. We'll need to coordinate our timing carefully. If your insertion happens during the new moon phase, we'll have natural darkness to help conceal our approach. Rodriguez looked impressed despite himself. That's exactly the route our intelligence officer suggested. Good intelligence and good flying often reach the same conclusions, Chen replied. The terrain dictates the tactics. Morrison was beginning to feel more confident about the mission. Chen clearly understood the operational requirements and had the experience to back up her confidence. But one question remained. Captain, I have to ask, have you worked with SEAL teams before? Not specifically SEALs, sir, but I've provided support for Rangers, Delta Force, and Marine Force Recon. Special operations teams have similar requirements regardless of service branch. Fast insertion, precise extraction, and immediate response to changing tactical situations. Williams crossed his arms. Rangers and Marines are good, ma'am, but SEALs operate differently. Chen nodded respectfully. I'm sure that's true, Petty Officer. That's why I'd like to spend time with your team before the mission. Understanding your specific procedures and communication protocols. Every unit has its own language and rhythm. Morrison found himself nodding. That was exactly the right answer. The best pilots understood that successful missions required integration with ground forces, not just flying skills. Captain, what's your biggest concern about this operation? Morrison asked. Chen considered the question carefully. Weather, sir. The meteorological reports show potential for sudden storm systems in the region. Mountain weather can change rapidly, and if we get caught in severe conditions during extraction, it could complicate everything. How do you plan to handle that? Constant monitoring of weather data, multiple contingency routes, and backup extraction points. We should plan for the worst-case scenario and hope for the best-case outcome. Thompson spoke up again. Captain, in your experience, what's the most important thing when supporting special operations? Chen turned to face the senior enlisted man. Communication, Sergeant. Clear, concise, and constant communication. When things go wrong, and something always goes wrong. The ability to adapt quickly depends on everyone understanding the changing situation immediately. Ride. End quote. Morrison looked around the room at his team members. The initial skepticism was giving way to professional interest. Chen was saying the right things. But more importantly, she was saying them with the confidence of someone who'd lived through the experiences she described. Captain, I want to be completely honest with you, Morrison said. When command told us they were sending their best pilot, my team expected someone different. Chen's expression remained neutral. I understand, sir, but after talking with you, I'm beginning to think command might have made the right choice. Your record speaks for itself, and your understanding of the operational requirements is exactly what we need. Williams shifted uncomfortably. Sir, I still have concerns about working with someone we've never flown with before. Chen addressed Williams directly. Petty Officer, your concerns are valid and professional. I'd be worried if you weren't asking these questions. The best way to address them is through preparation and training. I'd like to run through several rehearsal scenarios with your team before we deploy. Morrison liked what he was hearing. What kind of rehearsals? Communication drills, emergency procedures, and tactical scenarios. We should practice until we can anticipate each other's needs without extensive radio chatter. The more we train together, the smoother the actual mission will go. Rodriguez raised his hand. Captain, what's your backup plan if the primary extraction point gets compromised? Chen moved back to the map. I've identified 3 alternate extraction points within 10 miles of the primary site. Each offers different advantages depending on the tactical situation. If the primary becomes unusable, we can adapt to any of these alternates with minimal delay. She pointed to specific locations on the satellite imagery. This ridgeline offers excellent concealment but requires precision flying. This clearing provides more maneuvering room but less natural cover. This valley offers multiple escape routes if we encounter unexpected resistance. Morrison was impressed by her thoroughness. You've already done significant mission planning. I received the preliminary briefing materials yesterday, sir. I always prefer to arrive prepared rather than try to catch up during the actual briefing. Thompson nodded approvingly. That's good preparation, Captain. The briefing continued for another hour, with Chen demonstrating detailed knowledge of the aircraft capabilities, weapon systems, and tactical procedures. She answered every question with specificity and confidence, and gradually, the team's skepticism began to transform into professional respect. As the formal briefing concluded, Morrison made a decision. Captain Chen, I'd like you to join my team for chow tonight. It'll give everyone a chance to get to know each other better before we start intensive training tomorrow. Chen smiled slightly. The first time her professional demeanor had softened. I'd appreciate that, sir. Good teams are built on trust, and trust comes from understanding each other. Williams approached Chen as the team began to disperse. Ma'am, I want to apologize if I seemed disrespectful earlier. It wasn't personal. No apology necessary, Petty Officer. You were protecting your team, which is exactly what a good operator should do. I hope to earn your confidence through my performance, not just my words. Williams extended his hand. Looking forward to working with you, Captain. As Chen shook hands with each team member, Morrison reflected on the unexpected turn the briefing had taken. Command had indeed sent them someone different than expected. But perhaps different was exactly what they needed. The mission ahead would test all of their skills. But for the first time since receiving the assignment, Morrison felt confident they had the right team for the job. Sometimes the best surprises came in unexpected packages, and Captain Sarah Chen was proving to be exactly that kind of surprise. 3 days of intensive training had transformed the initial skepticism into grudging respect. Captain Chen had arrived each morning before dawn, spending hours with the SEAL team running through emergency procedures and communication protocols. Her Apache helicopter sat on the tarmac like a predatory bird, its dark green paint scheme making it nearly invisible against the desert landscape. Morrison watched from the observation tower as Chen guided her aircraft through a series of precision maneuvers that most pilots wouldn't attempt in broad daylight, let alone during the pre-dawn darkness they were currently training in. The Apache danced between mock obstacles, its rotor wash kicking up small dust devils that quickly dissipated in the cool morning air. Target acquired, Falcon 1. Chen's voice crackled through the radio with calm precision. Beginning approach to landing zone Alpha. Below, Thompson and his team waited in full combat gear, crouched behind a mock bunker that served as their practice extraction point. The scenario they were running simulated a hot extraction under enemy fire, with Chen providing cover while the team moved to the landing zone. The Apache appeared suddenly over the ridgeline, flying so low that its landing gear nearly scraped the rocky terrain. Chen brought the aircraft to a hover just 50 meters from the team's position, maintaining perfect stability despite the challenging wind conditions created by the surrounding hills. "Beautiful flying," Rodriguez muttered into his radio as he and Williams sprinted toward the helicopter in a tactical crouch. Chen's voice remained steady. "Movement to your east, Falcon 1. 3 contacts, approximately 200 meters out." The SEALs immediately adjusted their movement pattern, using the Apache as cover, while Chen rotated the aircraft to keep its weapons systems oriented toward the simulated threat. The coordination between pilot and ground team was becoming seamless with each practice run. "Falcon 1 aboard," Thompson reported, as the last team member climbed into the helicopter. "Roger, beginning extraction," Chen responded. The Apache lifted off immediately, banking sharply to the left while gaining altitude. She flew the escape route exactly as briefed, using terrain features to mask their movement from potential enemy observation. Morrison keyed his radio from the tower. "Outstanding work, everyone. Return to base for debrief." 20 minutes later, the team gathered in the same briefing room where they'd first met Chen. The atmosphere had changed completely from their initial encounter. Where there had been doubt, now there was confidence. Where there had been skepticism, now there was trust. "Captain Chen, that was some of the finest helicopter flying I've ever seen," Morrison began. "Your precision and timing are exactly what this mission requires." Chen nodded respectfully. "Thank you, sir. The team's movement and communication have been excellent as well. We're developing good rhythm together." Williams, who had been Chen's most vocal skeptic, spoke up. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology. I've worked with a lot of pilots over the years, and you're definitely among the best. That approach through the canyon this morning was incredible." "No apology necessary, Petty Officer. You were right to push for the highest standards. This mission won't give us any room for error." Thompson pulled out a tactical map showing their actual target area. "Captain, intelligence has updated the threat assessment. We're now looking at possible surface-to-air missile sites on these ridgelines." Chen studied the new information carefully. "SAM sites change our approach significantly. We'll need to stay even lower and use more indirect routing to avoid their radar coverage." She traced alternative routes with her finger, calculating distances and fuel requirements in her head. "This will add approximately 15 minutes to our insertion time. But it's manageable. The biggest challenge will be maintaining communication with Overwatch while staying below the radar horizon." Rodriguez raised a concern. "Captain, if we take the longer route, we'll be cutting it close on fuel for the return trip." "I've already considered that. We can carry external fuel tanks for extended range, though it will reduce our weapons payload slightly. The trade-off is acceptable given the mission parameters." Morrison was continually impressed by Chen's thorough preparation. Every question his team raised, she had already considered and developed solutions for. This was the mark of an experienced combat pilot who understood that successful missions required planning for every contingency. "What about emergency extraction procedures?" Thompson asked. If we get compromised and need immediate pickup, Chen had clearly thought about this scenario as well. I'll establish an orbit pattern approximately 5 miles from your insertion point. If you need emergency extraction, I can be over any of the 3 predetermined landing zones within 90 seconds. 90 seconds? William sounded surprised. That's incredibly fast response time. Time is life in emergency situations. The Apache can cover a lot of ground quickly when necessary. Morrison looked around the room at his team. He could see that they had complete confidence in Chen's abilities now. The extensive training had demonstrated her competence beyond any doubt. All right, everyone. We deploy at 0400 tomorrow morning. Final equipment check at 0330. Everyone get some rest. 1. As the team dispersed, Chen approached Morrison. Captain, could I have a word with you privately? Of course. What's on your mind? Chen waited until the others had left before speaking. Sir, I wanted to discuss something that didn't come up during the group briefings. There's a possibility that this mission could become significantly more complex than our current planning assumes. Morrison's attention sharpened. How so? Intelligence reports suggest our target may have connections to a larger network operating in the region. If we capture him successfully, there's a chance his associates will attempt to interfere with our extraction. You think we might face pursuit? Chen nodded. It's possible. I wanted you to know that I've prepared for that contingency. If we encounter hostile aircraft during extraction, I have tactics prepared to deal with them. Morrison appreciated her thoroughness. What kind of tactics? The Apache's weapon systems are designed for air-to-air combat, as well as ground support. I've loaded a mixed payload that will allow us to engage multiple threat types if necessary. Additionally, I've identified terrain features that we can use for defensive maneuvering if we're pursued. Have you encountered hostile aircraft before? Chen's expression grew more serious. Twice. Both times during missions similar to this one. The key is using the Apache's agility and the terrain to your advantage. Hostile pilots often underestimate what a skilled helicopter pilot can accomplish in mountain terrain. Morrison felt even more confident about the mission. Chen wasn't just planning for the expected challenges. She was preparing for scenarios that might never occur, but could be catastrophic if they did. Captain, I have to say, working with you has been one of the most professional experiences I've had. Your preparation and skill level are exactly what special operations require. Chen smiled slightly. Thank you, sir. This is what I trained for. Every mission is important, but supporting special operations teams requires an extra level of precision and reliability. The following morning arrived with clear skies and minimal wind, ideal flying conditions. Chen completed her pre-flight inspection with the same methodical attention to detail she'd shown throughout their training. Every system was checked twice, every contingency verified. Morrison and his team loaded their gear into the Apache as Chen ran through her final checklist. The helicopter's cabin was cramped with 4 fully equipped SEALs, but Chen had configured the seating to maximize both comfort and tactical effectiveness. Falcon Team, this is Desert Base, came the voice of their mission controller through the radio. You are cleared for departure. Weather conditions remain favorable. No changes to threat assessment. I see. Roger, Desert Base. Falcon Team departing at this time. Chen responded. The Apache lifted off smoothly, climbing quickly to their initial cruising altitude. Chen had filed a flight plan that would take them through several waypoints, designed to confuse any potential surveillance about their true destination. As they flew east toward the mountains, Morrison observed Chen's flying technique. She constantly scanned her instruments, while maintaining visual awareness of the terrain below. Her hands moved smoothly across the controls, making small adjustments that kept the aircraft in perfect trim despite changing wind conditions. How's everyone doing back there? Chen asked through the intercom after 30 minutes of flight time. All good, Captain, Thompson responded for the team. This is a smooth ride. Quote, we're about to enter the mountain passes, so it might get a bit rougher as we encounter updrafts and downdrafts from the terrain. As if on cue, the helicopter began experiencing mild turbulence as they entered the foothills. Chen adjusted her flying technique, using the aircraft's power and agility to smooth out the ride despite the challenging conditions. Rodriguez watched through the cabin window as rocky peaks slid past just meters from their rotor tips. The precision required to navigate through such tight spaces was remarkable, especially in the pre-dawn darkness. Approaching first waypoint, Chen announced. Beginning descent to nap of the Earth altitude. The Apache dropped suddenly, following the natural contours of the landscape. Chen flew the aircraft like it was an extension of her own body, responding instantly to every change in terrain and wind condition. Thompson had flown with many pilots over his career, but he'd never experienced anything quite like this. Chen's skill level was extraordinary, even by special operations standards. Falcon Base, this is Falcon Team, Chen radioed to their command center. Passing waypoint Alpha on schedule. All systems nominal. Roger, Falcon Team. Continue mission as planned. They flew through 2 more waypoints without incident, steadily approaching their target area. The intelligence briefings had been accurate. The terrain was challenging but manageable, with Chen's level of skill. 30 minutes to insertion point, Chen announced. Final systems check. Each team member verified their equipment one more time, while Chen ran through her weapons systems checklist. Everything was functioning perfectly. Target area coming into view, Chen reported. Beginning surveillance pass. She guided the Apache along a route that allowed them to observe the target compound from multiple angles, while remaining concealed behind terrain features. The compound appeared exactly as described in their intelligence briefings. I count 4 structures, 2 vehicles, and minimal visible security. Thompson observed through his night vision equipment. Confirmed. Landing Zone Bravo appears clear for insertion, Chen added, after completing her assessment. Morrison made the final decision. Falcon Team, proceed to insertion. Execute. 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 Chen banked the Apache toward their predetermined landing zone, a flat area approximately half a mile from the target compound. The approach would require flying through a narrow valley with rocky walls on both sides. Beginning final approach, Chen announced. Stand by for insertion. As they entered the valley, Rodriguez noticed something that made his blood run cold. Captain, movement on the left ridgeline, possible hostile position. Chen's response was immediate and professional. Confirmed, I see it. Multiple positions along both ridgelines. The mission had just become significantly more complex. They were flying into what appeared to be a carefully prepared ambush, and their only way out was through the narrow valley they were currently entering. Morrison's voice cut through the radio chatter. Captain, can you abort the approach? Chen's reply was calm and confident. Negative, sir. The valley is too narrow to reverse course safely. We're committed to the insertion. What happened next would test every hour of training they'd completed together. The mission was about to become a demonstration of exactly why Command had chosen Captain Sarah Chen for this operation. The first muzzle flash erupted from the left ridgeline like a deadly star in the darkness. Chen's reaction was instantaneous and decisive. Instead of climbing or turning away from the threat, she did something that defied conventional wisdom. She dropped the Apache even lower, using the valley floor as cover while simultaneously increasing speed. Taking fire from multiple positions, she announced with remarkable calm, initiating evasive maneuvers. The helicopter danced through the narrow valley like a deadly ballet, weaving between rocky outcroppings while tracer rounds streaked overhead. Chen's hands moved across the controls with practiced precision, using every feature of the terrain to mask their movement from the enemy gunners. Morrison gripped his weapon tighter, fighting the disorientation caused by the violent maneuvering. He'd been in countless firefights, but aerial combat was an entirely different experience. Everything depended on Chen's skill now. Falcon Base, this is Falcon Team, Chen radioed while simultaneously engaging targets with the Apache's chin-mounted gun. We are under heavy fire at the insertion point. Request immediate support. Roger, Falcon Team. Be advised, nearest support is 20 minutes out. 20 minutes might as well have been 20 hours in their current situation. They were on their own, trapped in a valley with hostiles on the high ground, and limited maneuvering room. Thompson watched through the cabin window as Chen's return fire silenced one enemy position after another. Her accuracy was phenomenal, placing precisely aimed bursts exactly where they needed to be while maintaining the aircraft's defensive movement patterns. "Captain, can you get us to the landing zone?" Morrison shouted over the noise of rotor blades and gunfire. "Negative, sir. The LZ is compromised. But I have an alternative." Chen suddenly banked the Apache hard to the right, flying directly toward what appeared to be a solid rock wall. At the last possible second, she revealed her intention. There was a narrow canyon entrance, hidden in the shadows that was barely wide enough for the helicopter. "Hold on," she warned. The Apache shot through the canyon entrance, with meters to spare on either side. The enemy gunfire was suddenly cut off, as the rocky walls provided complete protection from the ridgeline positions. Rodriguez looked out at the canyon walls flashing past, and wondered how Chen had even known this passage existed. The intelligence briefings hadn't mentioned it, which meant she'd identified it during their surveillance pass and calculated the approach in her head while under fire. "How did you know about this canyon?" Williams asked in amazement. "I noticed it during our initial reconnaissance pass." "Sometimes alternative routes become necessary," Chen replied, while navigating the twisting passage with surgical precision. The canyon opened into a small valley that provided perfect concealment from the enemy positions. Chen brought the Apache to a hover in the center of the clearing, as stable as if they were sitting on the ground. "Landing zone Charlie is secure," she announced. "You have a clear route to the target compound through the eastern draw." Morrison and his team quickly exited the helicopter, their confidence in Chen now absolute. She had just demonstrated flying skills that bordered on the impossible, extracting them from what should have been a disastrous ambush and delivering them to an even better position than their original plan. "Falcon team moving to target," Thompson reported, as the team disappeared into the rocky terrain. Chen established an overwatch position, hovering just below the canyon rim, where she could monitor radio communications while remaining hidden from enemy observation. Her weapons systems were armed and ready, prepared to provide immediate support if the ground team encountered resistance. 25 minutes later, Thompson's voice crackled through the radio. "Falcon 1. Target secured. Ready for extraction." "Roger, moving to pickup point now," Chen responded. She guided the Apache through a different route that approached the compound from an unexpected direction. The enemy forces were still concentrated around the original ambush site, leaving the eastern approach undefended. The extraction proceeded smoothly, with Chen providing cover while the team loaded their prisoner and moved to the landing zone. Within minutes, they were airborne and heading toward their exit route. "Falcon Base, this is Falcon Team. Package secured. Beginning return journey. Outstanding work, Falcon Team. Be advised, we're tracking multiple aircraft, launching from airfields in your vicinity. Possible pursuit aircraft." Morrison looked at Chen, who seemed completely unsurprised by this development. She had predicted this possibility during their private conversation. "Roger, Falcon Base. We're prepared for that contingency." Chen altered their flight path, heading toward a series of mountain peaks that would provide terrain advantages if they encountered hostile aircraft. Her fuel management calculations were precise. They had enough range to reach friendly airspace, but with minimal reserves for extended combat maneuvering. "Aircraft approaching from the south," Rodriguez reported, scanning the horizon through his night vision equipment. "Looks like 2 fixed-wing fighters." Chen's tactical display confirmed the sighting. 2 fast-moving aircraft were closing on their position from behind. In any conventional engagement, helicopters were at a severe disadvantage against fighter aircraft. But Captain Sarah Chen had never been conventional. "Everyone hold on. This is about to get interesting," she announced. Instead of running from the approaching fighters, Chen did something unexpected. She flew directly toward the highest mountain peak in the area, using the terrain to break the enemy pilots' lock-on attempts. The first fighter pilot, confident in his speed and altitude advantage, dove toward the Apache to engage. Chen waited until the last possible moment, then used the helicopter's superior maneuverability to duck behind a rocky spire, just as the fighter committed to its attack run. The fighter pilot, traveling at high speed, couldn't adjust quickly enough to follow the Apache's movement. As he flashed past, Chen popped up behind him and engaged with a precisely aimed missile. Splash one, she reported calmly, as the first fighter disappeared in a ball of flame. The second pilot, seeing his wingman destroyed, became more cautious. He began making careful passes, trying to get a clear shot without falling victim to the same trap. Chen used this caution against him. Each time the fighter lined up for an attack, she used the mountain terrain to break visual contact and force him to reset his approach. It was a deadly game of three-dimensional chess, with rocky peaks serving as the game board. Thompson watched in fascination as Chen demonstrated tactics he'd never imagined possible. She was using the Apache like a ground-based air defense system, turning the helicopter's limitations into advantages through superior positioning and timing. Second aircraft is breaking off, Rodriguez observed. He's heading south. Chen didn't relax her vigilance. He'll be back with reinforcements. We need to clear this airspace immediately. She pushed the Apache to maximum speed, racing through mountain passes toward friendly territory. Her fuel gauges showed they were cutting it close, but her calculations had been accurate. They would reach safety with minutes to spare. Falcon Base. This is Falcon Team, crossing into friendly airspace. Mission successful. Package delivered. Click. Roger, Falcon Team. Outstanding work. Return to base for debrief. As they approached Naval Air Station Fallon, Morrison reflected on the mission they'd just completed. What had begun as a routine insertion had become a masterclass in combat flying and tactical thinking. Chen brought the Apache to a perfect landing on the designated pad, shutting down systems with the same methodical precision she'd shown throughout the entire operation. As the team climbed out of the helicopter, Williams approached Chen with obvious admiration. "Captain, that was the most incredible flying I've ever seen. You saved our lives multiple times tonight." Chen removed her flight helmet, her hair slightly damp with perspiration but her demeanor as professional as ever. "Just doing my job, petty officer. The mission required adaptive tactics, so we adapted." Thompson shook his head in amazement. "Ma'am, what you did tonight wasn't just doing your job. That was artistry. I've never seen anyone fly like that." Morrison gathered his team for a quick preliminary debrief before the formal after-action reports. "Gentlemen, we just witnessed why Captain Chen has the reputation she does. Her performance tonight was exceptional by any standard." He turned to Chen. "Captain, your tactical thinking and flying skills exceeded every expectation. The way you handled that ambush and the subsequent air-to-air engagement was remarkable." Chen appreciated the praise but redirected focus to the team effort. "Sir, the mission succeeded because everyone performed their duties perfectly. Good flying only matters if the ground team executes their objectives, and your team was flawless." Rodriguez spoke up. "Captain, I have to ask, how did you know about that hidden canyon? That maneuver saved the entire mission." Chen smiled slightly. "Detailed map study and constant situational awareness. I always look for alternatives to the primary plan because things rarely go exactly as expected. But you calculated that approach under fire, while maneuvering aggressively, and with enemy rounds hitting around us," Williams added. "That's not just preparation. That's exceptional skill under pressure, training and experience," Chen replied. "Every difficult situation teaches you something that applies to the next challenge." As they walked toward the debriefing building, Morrison found himself thinking about how wrong his initial assumptions had been. When command had promised their best pilot, he'd expected someone who fit his preconceptions about what best looked like. Instead, they'd sent someone who redefined his understanding of what exceptional really meant. The formal debriefing lasted 2 hours, with Chen providing detailed explanations of her tactical decisions and the reasoning behind each maneuver. Her after-action report was comprehensive and precise, demonstrating the same attention to detail she'd shown in every aspect of the mission. "Captain Chen," the debrief officer concluded, "this mission report will be studied by military aviators for years to come. Your innovations in helicopter air-to-air tactics alone are worth documenting." Chen nodded respectfully. "I hope the lessons learned will help other pilots face similar challenges successfully." As the formal proceedings concluded, Morrison approached Chen one final time. "Captain, I owe you an apology." Chen looked puzzled. "Sir? When you first arrived, My team and I made assumptions based on appearances rather than qualifications. That was unprofessional and wrong. Chen's expression softened slightly. Captain Morrison, doubt is healthy in special operations. Your team's initial skepticism pushed me to prove my capabilities through performance rather than just credentials. That's exactly how it should work. Morrison extended his hand. I'd be honored to work with you on any future operations. Chen shook his hand firmly. The honor would be mine, sir. Your team's professionalism and tactical expertise made tonight's success possible. As Chen walked away toward the flight line to secure her aircraft, Thompson turned to Morrison. Skipper, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like what she did tonight. Morrison nodded. Neither have I, Sergeant. Neither have I. Williams, who had been the most vocal skeptic initially, watched Chen conducting her post-flight inspection with the same methodical care she'd shown all evening. You know, Skipper, sometimes the best surprises come in packages you don't expect. Rodriguez laughed. Speak for yourself, Williams. I knew she was the real deal when she put those mission patches on the table. Rodriguez laughed, President. Rodriguez laughed, Williams. No, you didn't. Thompson corrected with a grin. You were just as surprised as the rest of us when she started talking about Firebase Delta. Morrison listened to his team's banter with satisfaction. They'd completed a challenging mission successfully. But more importantly, they'd learned something valuable about making assumptions and recognizing excellence, regardless of its packaging. The mission report would make for interesting reading at command levels. Captain Sarah Chen had just demonstrated that the best operators weren't always the ones who looked the part. They were the ones who could perform when performance mattered most. As the team headed inside to complete their paperwork, Morrison took one last look at Chen securing her Apache for the night. Tomorrow, there would be other missions, other challenges, and other opportunities to exceed expectations. But tonight had proven something important. When the stakes were highest and the margin for error was zero, Command had sent exactly the right person for the job. Sometimes the best pilot really was the best pilot, regardless of what anyone expected that to look like. The SEAL captain's request had been fulfilled in ways none of them had anticipated, and the woman who had calmly stood up and left everyone shocked had just demonstrated exactly why she deserved that reaction.